Hey, everybody. So today I want to talk about something that I think is appropriate for this time of year, and that's how to get back into practicing after you've taken a break. And this video is inspired by one of my favorite saxophone players and YouTubers, Bob Reynolds. He made a video very similar to this recently, and it got me to thinking about what I do in order to get back into the routine after something like just happened the holiday season. So I'll leave a link to Bob's video in the description below. Obviously, everybody should go check it out. I'm sure so many of you have already checked that one out, but this is just my 2 cents on the matter, and hopefully it can give you some other options in the practice room. So let me start by saying that I think taking a break, maybe 1 or 2 times a year, is a very healthy thing to do. We all know that practicing is the only way to get better. And we also know that the more we practice, the better we're going to get, and the more that practice is going to pay off. So, as a core attitude, I think practicing as much as possible, as often as possible, as consistently as possible is what's going to lead you to being a great jazz musician. However, sometimes we do need a reset. Burnout is real in any arena of life, whether that be work or what we do as a hobby, which for you might be jazz. So for me, during the holidays, my little daughter is home from daycare. It's like I can't do as much practicing. So I'm kind of forced into taking a break for the best reasons possible. I mean, what better reason than to spend time with my child? But still, it's sort of a forced break, whether I like it or not. And usually it's about a week or two. And it's not like I never play my instrument during that time. It's just that regular dedicated time that I usually have and actively set aside for myself doesn't exist as much. But of course, now it being the new year and everything getting back to normal, it's time to really refocus myself. And it's that transitionary period. There's like a danger zone there where maybe you're forced to take a break or you want to take a break. And then if you're not careful, that break can get extended and extended. And obviously that's not a good thing. It can be very intimidating to get back into a serious practice routine when your mind is not already in that mode. So these strategies are really designed as a bridge from getting from the break back into maybe a more serious, calculated, planned out practice routine that is ultimately going to help you achieve your goals. All right, so how do we get back into it? Well, I have some ideas, some practical things that you can do. And I'm going to start with one that has been the most important for me. And I've got to give credit to one of my favorite musicians in the whole world, Melissa Aldana, for giving me this idea that this strategy is kind of based off of. So Melissa told me she's a big fan of doing things that cover multiple bases at once. And this is such a great strategy for a couple of reasons. So let me start by the first one. None of us have unlimited practice time. Maybe you do. If you do, you are extremely lucky. But I know that I don't, and I know that most people don't. So if you think about your practice time being spent covering multiple skills that you need to be a great musician, that can be a huge advantage for you. So here's a concrete example. As a saxophone player, I need to work on the saxophone. So I need to work on sound. I need to work on air support. I need to work on playing in tune. And at the same time, I have my whole other set of concerns, which is to be able to play quality solos, to be able to improvise freely, to be able to handle chord changes, all that stuff. Okay, so what if I could come up with a way to practice a lot of those things at the same time? And on top of this being a great way to get back into your practice routine after a break, it's just a great thing to do in general. So one of the biggest things that needs to happen after an extended break is to get back in touch with your instrument, to make sure everything's in tip-top shape in terms of how you interact with your vehicle for expression. And I also think taking the pressure off of yourself mentally to, jump back in and start working on a tune at 250 BPM, you could probably bridge the gap to that point, especially if your brain is not in the habit of doing that after a break. So what I'll do is I'll pick something super simple. So in this case, I'm going to use the tune All the Things You Are. I'm going to use the concept of open triads. And what I'm focusing on my instrument is playing in tune and playing with a great sound in all registers of the saxophone. So what it might look like is that I'm playing through open triads, but completely out of time. I have a tuner on and in front of me, so I'm checking my intonation. I'm obviously hearing my sound, but I'm also having to think about the harmony going by, and my brain is getting back into the mode of thinking about chord changes, hearing how they sound, outlining them clearly, but all at the same time that I'm connecting to my instrument. Now, what you just heard was going through them extremely, extremely slowly and really focusing in on each note, thinking about the intonation, the sound quality. But I could also do this a little bit faster. And I'm still thinking about all that stuff, but I'm just like forcing myself to go through it a tiny bit faster. And then usually what I find through this type of work is that it very naturally leads me to other things over like this particular tune, for instance. So I'm focusing on like keeping the pressure off of myself largely. You'll hear there's no metronome on. There's no backing track. I'm not trying to do the most killing stuff that I know right at the edge of my abilities. I'm simply trying to bring my mind back into a place of connecting with my instrument and dealing with the things that we have to think about and pull off to be great improvisers. So naturally, this might lead me into something like, now I'm just going to play over this set of chord changes, but I'm going to do it completely rubato, completely out of time. So now I'm not just dealing with open triads. I'm allowing myself to do whatever I want. I'm still using my ears, connecting to that instrument. But it's not like, oh, last time I practiced, I left off at 224 BPM. So today I've got to pick up right at that tempo and try to push it 20 more. And you see how it's just like sort of a different way of thinking. It's just a low pressure way to get back into practicing after a break. So there's a strategy that's one of my favorites, and that's why I talked about it first, is that you just want to ease back into it. You want to take some of that pressure off of yourself and allow yourself to connect with your instrument and the process again. And if you've never done this before, you might love it so much that it might become a permanent part of your practice routine. But particularly after a break, I feel like this is a great thing to do. Okay, so here's another strategy. I think a lot of us, rightfully so, are trying to get really, really good at playing, for lack of a better term, a bebop and post bebop style of music, which involves some pretty specific things, some pretty specific skills, some pretty specific sounds, some pretty specific ways of thinking and hearing, but that can be really intimidating. I feel like a really large mental load after a break. It can feel like you're down the bottom of the mountain and you're staring up at the steepest part of it, and it's just gonna be really hard to get on your way again. So, what if we were to introduce like the time and tempo back into it? But we were to really strip away all of the hardest parts, which maybe means something like taking away all of the measure to measure chord changes and thinking about something like key centers and using that as a way to transition back into it, get your mind and body in the right place. So, Autumn Leaves is like the perfect example of this. There's changes that a lot of us want to address, rightfully so. We can get some great sounds by playing and considering all the different chord changes. But Autumn Leaves is so simple. At its most base form, it's in B flat major and G minor. So, what if, as a bridge to get back into the more hardcore specific stuff, we just played over Autumn Leaves, only thinking about those two things? I think you probably agree with me that would be a great bridge between the two extremes. And you probably have a lot of fun doing it. I know I do. Now, of course, this topic of key center soloing, that's something we could talk about a little bit more deeply, and we will. Big idea that I want you to think about is just taking something that might be complicated, stripping it down to its bare essence, and practicing it that way. Just requires less thinking and more intuitive doing. Okay, so those were the two big things that I wanted to talk about. I've got two more things that I'll just talk about briefly that could be a great way to get back into practicing. And one of them is take everything off your list except for one thing that you really enjoy doing. So maybe that one thing that you really enjoy doing is technical work, playing scales. Just do that for a week, again, as a bridge for getting back into shedding. We all know that just practicing scales is not going to make us like a top-notch musician, but if that's something that you could do for hours on end and you truly enjoy it, just do that. Don't worry about the other stuff. You could get back into it later. On the other extreme, what if you hate practicing scales and practicing technique, but you love transcribing, you love listening and picking things up off of records and playing them along with the records? Just do that for a week. Again, it's just gonna get you back into the routine of picking up your instrument every day and doing something. And that's really what we're concerned about after a break. So simplify, simplify, simplify to something that you really enjoy doing and use that as a way to get back into the everyday routine. Now, along those same lines, my last tip is to practice something that doesn't require as much thought or preparation on your part. So a lot of times when we're improvising, we start with a blank page, so to say. We have to sort of figure out what we want to do to get the sounds that we want in our playing. But what if we were to, let's say, pick up an etude book for our instrument and practice those for a week before we start the process of like situating everything and thinking and putting it all together ourselves? The beauty of something like an etude book or a piece of classical music is that all you have to do is open the book and start playing. Now, are you going to be thinking about what you're playing, how to make it better, all that stuff? Of course you are. But it's like a ready-made thing for you to dive into with no delay between thinking about doing it and doing it. And this is something that I do all the time when I'm feeling uninspired or I'm feeling like all the stuff that I've designed for myself that I'm practicing is not going well. Even sometimes when I'm not taking a break, I'll just shift to playing some etudes as something to like clear my mind, to wipe the deck, to keep the instrument in my mouth without as much stress and feelings of inadequacy and all that stuff that plagues all of us, I think. All right, so there's some strategies that hopefully you can use if you are at this time of year coming off of a break, looking to get back into it. Let me know in the comments below what some of your favorite strategies are. I would love to hear about them. Thanks to Bob Reynolds for inspiring this video. Make sure you go and check his out. And also thanks to Melissa Aldana for giving that idea that I opened the video with that has really changed my life as an improviser. Sometimes it's those simple little nuggets that can really turn that light bulb on in your head. One last thank you. Thank you to you for watching this video, for subscribing, and for all the support. See you on another video soon. Bye, everyone.